think it makes just a little bit better with the light, right?
Okay, I'm gonna get started.
Just a little bit light.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Samley, the events coordinator for AIALA. Thank you for joining our Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusivity series, Discover Iranian-American Culture and Architects in LA. We have a wonderful group of presenters you'll be hearing from tonight, and I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to our moderators. We are using Zoom meetings for this event, so we ask that you keep your audio muted during the presentation. We do have a 3-strike rule. If you accidentally or unintentionally disrupt the event, we will remove you from the meeting. However, we do encourage you all to engage with each other and the speakers in the chat box, and we'll have time at the end of the presentation for a short Q&A. So please type your questions in the chat box and we'll get to those answered. We'll get those answered during the portion of that event. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mitra to get this event started.
Thank you, Jessica. Hi, everyone. My name is Mitra Memari. I am an AIALA board member, and I'm acting as VP this year and president-elect. I would like to welcome everyone to this first event of what we hope is a series of conversations around Iranian-American architects. To start off, I'd like to wish all of my Iranian colleagues here, NOWRUZتون پیروز, Happy New Year. I'm delighted to be co-hosting this event with my fellow board member, Ziba Qasemi. Zima, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Mitra. Good evening and welcome. Happy NOWRUZ. I'm Ziba Qasemi, AIALA Director and Co-Vice Chair, J.E.D.I Committee. We are thrilled to have you join us for tonight's J.E.D.I Voices series, Iranian-American Culture and Architects in Los Angeles. J.E.D.I Committee is a collaboration between AIALA and SoCal NOMA to advance the issues of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. J.E.D.I Voices, or J.E.D.I Voices series showcases design professionals of all races, cultures, and backgrounds, their contribution to the profession, and the value they bring to build environment. For tonight, we have reached out to Iranian architects and students in Los Angeles and invited them to share their stories with us, which they have graciously accepted. Thank you. Before their presentation, Mitra and I will share our stories, followed by a window to Iranian culture as it's experienced in Los Angeles, and also a brief history of Iranian vernacular architecture by Mahmoud Qarachedaghi. So without further ado, let's kick off tonight's event. Mitra Jun. The idea of this event came when you and I shared our stories as Iranian women and teenagers immigrating to US post-Iranian Revolution. Do you remember the story that you shared with me?
I do, and how amazing it is to have two AIALA board members that are Iranian-American and have some similar experiences from having lived through the war and the revolution. But, you know, I was lucky enough when I immigrated to have come with my family, and we landed in Santa Monica in the early 80s, and I started attending Lincoln Junior High School there. As I was trying to navigate a new culture and setting, it was just so comforting to be around other Iranians. There was a bond amongst the Iranians at the junior high. We banded together to help support each other and also give comfort of the new home that we were all experiencing and transitioning to. To this day, those friendships have lasted and created a warm welcome to this foreign city and culture for me. Ziba Jun, why don't you share some of your story of immigrating here?
That was really heartwarming, Mitra, and my story is a little bit different. I moved to LA as a teenager without my parents, And this was after the revolution when the memory of hostage crisis was still lingering. I remember the anti-Iranian sentiment, hostility, and even hate crime against Iranians. Once actually I was pushed to ground and almost beaten when someone asked about my nationality. So the advice from my family was that to blend and not stand out. And so because of that, I think I didn't really embrace my Iranian culture for those first 4 years. And it wasn't until I went to college to the University of Arizona where I reconnected with my Iranian roots and discovered the contribution of Iranian art, architecture, and literature. U of A had at that time a dedicated research lab for desert architecture where they studied and reimagined the Iranian wind towers. And I also mixed anthropology with architecture where I was able to research the socioeconomic relationships of some of the features of Iranian vernacular architecture. So fast forward, my master's thesis, which was called the Behavioral Wind Towers, was based on the socio-political effect of wind towers on Zoroastrian minorities in Yazd, which is an arid region of Iran with magnificent vernacular architecture. So Mitra, I actually wonder if my experience would have been different if I would have landed in Westwood.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Ziba, and that sort of hard experience that you had when you first came here. I think it's important to highlight that immigration is hard. Nobody wants to immigrate from what they know. Most of us don't. And to have experienced that, what resiliency you've had to endure to get to where you are. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So yeah, people may not. I'm hearing an echo, Ziba.
I just shared my screen. Does everybody
Okay.
see the presentation?
Yes. Would you mind muting? I'm not sure if that's the reason. Okay. All right. This is much better. Yes. So yeah, many of you may know that Los Angeles is the largest population of Iranians outside of Iran in the US. It's estimated that there's about 700,000 people. And you may ask, why LA? Why do people come to LA from Iran? I think some of the things that I've learned or heard about are that LA reminds Iranians of home. The landscape, the car culture, the mountains that surround LA are very similar to what we've experienced and lived through in Tehran. Also, when a community has taken roots, others follow. Iranians started coming to LA in the 60s to pursue higher education, and later followed by the political turmoil in Iran. And because they had people, they knew people, it was easier to come here and get adjusted. And another amazing thing about LA is that it's a city with all different ethnicities who have their own independent community. An immigrant can literally be who they want to be in LA. And definitely that's true for the Iranian community, starting with Tehrangeles.
Yes, Tehrangeles. So Westwood, internationally known as Tehrangeles, is the most popular neighborhood where you can actually experience a little slice of Iran. Everything is written in Farsi, which is the Persian language, with Iranian shops, restaurants, markets, and even Iranian books and music store. If you haven't been to Westwood, Tehrangeles, the best activity is to experience Iranian food. Food, in my opinion, is always the connecting medium to bring different cultures together. One of my favorite Iranian dishes that I recommend for you to taste is called kashke bademjun, which is made of eggplants and it's scrumptious. Mitra, do you have a favorite dish?
I have many to name. Would you mind muting again, Ziba John? Okay, great. I have many to name, but what I see on the screen is albalu polo, which is the sour cherry rice. And I often take my teams for celebrations to Iranian restaurants pre-COVID. And everyone who is non-Iranian loves that sour cherry rice. So I'm already hungry looking at these slides. You know, the Iranian community in LA goes beyond what's known as Tehrangeles. Iranians have presence all around the LA area, from downtown businesses to stores in Ventura County or Ventura Street in the Valley, and even beyond in Southern California and Orange County. There are all types of Iranians. There's wealthy, working class Iranians, secular and religious Iranians. You know, just about every Iranian kind of Iranian you can find that lives in LA. And to me, it always warms my heart when I see my fellow Iranians around the city at work or, you know, just running errands, just because I feel that there's some connection there within the city that I live in. And then there's a lot of contributions that are made within the communities that we live in, including the volunteer event for NOWRUZ at Midnight Mission. Mayor Garcetti every year has a message for NOWRUZ. This is a recording of a few years ago.
A great friend of the Persian community, our mayor, Eric Garcetti.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Councilmember Huizar and Councilmember Koretz. From Persian Square to Pershing Square, you do a great job of representing this community, and every year we know when NOWRUZ is here because the best flowers are with us, the best food is in the back, and the most wonderful people are around us that are the lifeblood of this city. I grew up in a small Iranian suburb called Encino, so I'm very familiar with this community's contributions, not only here locally in what we are proud to say is, yes, Tehrangeles, but also we hope one day to strengthen and to reestablish the relationship with our sister city, Tehran. Right here in America, we celebrate this holiday as a holiday of renewal, a holiday of celebration and of family. The great poet Feridun Moshiri once wrote that open the windows, for the kind breeze is celebrating the birthday of flowers, and each spring on each and every branch next to each leaf has lit candles. So as each of us lights those candles and welcomes the spring, we thank our protectors who are here with us, the contributions of a diverse community. A reminder we need more now than ever of the importance of that family, of that community, of immigrant contributions. So Nowruz Mubarak to this entire community, and know that Los Angeles will always be a great Iranian-American city. Thank you.
That was a great segment to talk about Persian New Year. If you noticed, we started today's program by saying Happy Nowruz. Nowruz is the Iranian New Year that starts on spring equinox and usually is March 20th or 21st and lasts exactly 13 days. Iranians celebrate these 13 days by a series of rituals that date back 3,000 years ago. One of those rituals is sitting and gathering around a table that has 7 symbolic items that start with the letter S. This table is called Hafsin, which literally means 7 S's. The items on it symbolize prosperity, fertility, long life, health, and love. Iranian families gather around this setting at the moment that the year becomes new, congratulate each other. When kids actually receive presents from the elders, usually in the form of new money, which is awesome. I remember when I used to compete with my cousins who would collect more money from different relatives by the end of the 13 days.
Ziba, you just reminded me of my childhood. Would you mind muting again? Sorry. Where we were all counting all the money we got. So what's lovely is that Westwood and other locations come alive during NOWRUZ with banners on the streets and local malls displaying the half scene. Another ritual that takes place on the Tuesday before New Year's is jumping over fire. At sunset, after making one or more bonfires, we jump over the flames singing, "Let your redness be mine, my paleness be yours," as a purification practice. Pre-COVID, you could find Iranians at Dockweiler Beach and a few other locations doing this ritual. And then on the 13th day of the new year, people spend time picnicking outdoors. It marks the end of NOWRUZ. And if you happen by chance to be at a park when this event is taking place, you would see that Iranians have taken over the park. There is a feast of food, music, dancing, and celebration and coming together, which is a beautiful way to end the New Year celebrations. Now that you guys have a little window into the Iranian culture, Mahmoud will give us a glimpse into the Iranian vernacular contributions to sustainability.
For Abade to go while we're figuring this out?
Yeah.
Good idea.
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you. Just gonna spotlight you. There you go.
Okay, does everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We do.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm excited to be here and share a little bit of my journey. So a lot to cover in 5 minutes, so ping me, Corinne, if I go over time. So my name is Avide Hagigi. I am a licensed architect currently at ZGF Architects here in Los Angeles. I specialize in sustainable design, specifically net zero carbon and net zero energy buildings. I also specialize in healthy materials and circular economy. I've been practicing for the past 8 years. And over the span of my career, I've worked on anything from schools, elementary schools and middle schools to office buildings, high-rise residential buildings, and laboratories. So what you see here on the screen is a few images of my recent projects. On the upper left is a 1.25 million square foot office complex in Sacramento for the state of California. It's a net zero carbon building complex. On the upper right is a headquarters for the California Air Resources Board here in Riverside. That is a net zero energy project. And below the bottom two, the one on the left is an 8-story prefab modular hotel in Hollywood. That's almost complete now. And on the bottom right is a 16-story multifamily building on Wilshire in La Jolla. So a little bit of my work there. So how did I get here? Growing up in Tehran had a huge impact on shaping my fundamentals as a practicing architect. As you all know, Tehran is a beautiful city. It comes alive at night with lights and cars and people bustling about. The picture you see is a view from the top of Tehran. Tehran oozes with culture, history, and cool architecture. It's where I have my fondest childhood memories of playing in the streets with my cousins and shopping in Tehrangeles and having great food and being with family. I was in Tehran until I was about 12 years old when my family immigrated. Tehran also is quite a congested and polluted city. Air pollution is ranked one of the worst. There's routinely air pollution spikes that cause closing of schools. Tehran is surrounded by mountains, so all the pollution from cars sort of just gets stuck in the city. It was always interesting to me living in Tehran because it seemed like the people and the city was always in this context of constant environmental pollution in a way, and it was normalized. And then when I came to Los Angeles, I experienced the same thing. It was almost a parallel world of, oh, Los Angeles is the same way. We also experience a lot of pollution here. It's the same topography, some of the same environmental issues, but also a very equally complex city. The picture on the screen here is just to show how thick the pollution the air gets in Tehran when it's at its worst. So, how did I get here? Growing up in Iran, I saw a lot of a city and a people and a culture with dealing with a lot of systemic oppression. The government there obviously filters a lot of information and tries to control a lot of things. And I didn't really know what kind of impact I wanted to have when I got older, or what kind of career I wanted to have. I just knew that I saw a lot of things that were wrong in the world. And as I continued my education, grew up, immigrated to the United States. My family immigrated to Orange County, just an hour away from here. I realized that, all the social, economic, and physical structures in our world were all created by human beings at some point. Every institution, every corporation, every financial system was put in place by humans. And equally, every aspect of our physical environment was created by somebody at some point. So the real powerful moment for me was to realize that just like everybody else, I could have an impact in creating the world around me as I like to see it. So I went on to get my Bachelor's of Architecture from Woodbury University. I graduated back in 2011. And after that, I started working at a firm that specialized in K-12 schools. Then from there, I worked at a firm that did the high-rise residential and multifamily mixed-use projects, and eventually found my way to ZGF, where I'm working on laboratories and office buildings. These days, I am a strong advocate for decarbonization of the built environment and for getting to carbon neutrality. I am serving as co-chair of the AIA. I served as a co-chair of the AIALA Committee on the Environment about 2 years ago. We launched a successful symposium that's happening annually now on climate change. I highly recommend you check it out. And as of last year, I'm serving on the steering committee of the AIA California Committee on the Environment to advocate for development of code language for decarbonization. I've also been leading the Living Future Los Angeles Collaborative for the past 4 years. I truly believe that every human being, everybody deserves to live in spaces that are safe and healthy. Really, I imagine a Los Angeles with clear blue skies all the time. I imagine a Los Angeles where you can surf after it rains and the water isn't polluted. I imagine a Los Angeles with every single act of design and construction resulting in greater biodiversity. And that's my hope for the future of LA. Thank you.
Davide, do you want to share who's next? So let's, actually, we
Yes.
can go on to, we can go back to the beginning. Jessica will share her screen.
And I think next up is, are we going to back to Mahmoud or Arman? I'm not sure.
Back, we're going back.
So I should click on sharing.
Jessica's going to share her screen and then I will spotlight you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you and happy NOWRUZ, everyone, and welcome to this the event. My name is Mahmoud Qarachidaqi. As my the uncle was saying, I am from Kashan. I was born and raised in Kashan. And then for 13 years, I was there, then went to city of Yazd, another fantastic indigenous, city with indigenous architecture. And then moved to Tehran, got my master in architecture in Tehran University. And during each summer, me and my wife were traveling all over the Europe. Each time see one part of the Europe just for architectural reason. And then in '76, we decided that next year we should come to US and stay here for a couple of years and see architecture here. And then when I got here, I stuck into, because I couldn't stay more than 6 months, the only excuse was to be enrolled in university. I enrolled at USC. Got another master there, and I got sucked into the first educational part of it, and then teaching part of that. So for a few years, I started teaching at USC. Then 2 years after I came, 2.5 years after, the revolution happened, and that was the time that many Iranians started coming. Just as Mitra said, when we came, she was not still landed at Westwood or Santa Monica. When we were passing on Santa Monica or Westwood, if there was one Iranian, me and my wife were whispering that, oh, this person is Iranian. That is Iranian person, and nobody was there. So we came here, and after revolution, when people were coming, they needed a lot of help because we saw, without help, you don't get anywhere. So we tried to help our fellow Iranian architects, and we created a society called the Society of Iranian-American Architects and Engineers back in 1981. And during 30 years, 40 years, we have helped many Iranian, to get the job, to get the citizenship, to get their license, understand their issue. Another things that I did, I was really fascinated because growing in Kashan and Yazd with the sustainable design. So at university, I started the first talking about these sustainable design, which at that time, the word sustainable had not been created. And we were saying, environmentally friendly architecture or something with natural devices. And so with that, later on, we got involved with and created with two other people, the City of Los Angeles principal architects, Bill Holland and Deborah Weintraub. We created one sustainable task force, and then later on, we spinned off of that and become the SPI, Sustainable Policy Institute, which I'm still vice president of that. So we created that, and now briefly, that was my background in sustainable design and in helping other Iranian to do and get adopted to this this land. So with that, I will go very quickly about some of the Iranian, the value of some of these Iranian indigenous architecture, because that needs hours and hours of talking about that to, to really get deep into it. I talk about that also at the AIA National Convention in 2 times, back in 2000 and 2001 in Denver and Philadelphia. Now, Iran, as you know, is a very large country. And just like America, different parts of the country is cold, hot, humid, wet, and all kinds of climate we have. So next one. Next slide. Oh, yes. And the cities or villages or any development all happened based on that climate. They had to adapt to the climate. So the architecture and the city, the form of the whole city was indicative of where they were located. Next one. The same thing with different houses. The houses in north of Iran, the way they were treating, or south of Iran, or Kashan, on the bottom right, left-hand corner is our house that I was born and lived there for 13 years with badgirs and all those courtyards. Next one. And some of the characteristics that you can see in and similarity between these architecture, the two bottom one pictures, one is from Yazd, one is from Kashan, and you think that the same architect did that, but this was not done by one person, but it was just through the necessity and coping with the weather. These are stepping courtyard and the water in the middle and badgirs and all those wind towers were helping us to be able to live with the naturally live there without any artificial heating or ventilation or cooling. Next one, please. Now, when you compare it with the United States, these 4 pictures are from north, south, east, west of United States. All are the same. Doesn't matter the climate. If you are in Los Angeles, if you are in Atlanta or New York or etc., everything is the same. All the building also is the same. All 4 sides of the building also are the same. Doesn't matter if it's south, east, west, north oriented, because the energy was cheap and they were able to use it no matter what. They didn't need to live with the nature. So that is something that inspired me to talk about that and to say how we can use these lessons that we learned from these indigenous architecture and apply it to modern architecture in the Western society. Next one. The basic elements that you use back home to cope with the harsh weathers is 4 basic elements. The rest are related to these 4. One is shade, sun, prevailing wind, and the water. These 4 elements create all the thing that you need, all the help that you need. Next one. For example, for the wind and the type of shade, you use these wind catcher. And you can see the wind comes, or not the wind, we call it prevailing winds, because that, just like here, you don't want to use the Santa Ana winds, you want to use the prevailing wind. Comes through these badgirs or wind tower and cool the place, pass through the garden in the middle, water in the middle, and add the humidity that they needed badly near the desert. Next one. And all the lighting that you wanted and all the fenestration on different buildings. The main attention in Iranian architecture is inside, not the outside. Outside, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, is very, very simple, nothing added to that. Inside are very, very elaborately done and decorated. And also the windows in different layers of each towers or each area, those opening create a buffer through the natural ventilation and cross ventilation, create a cross ventilation, and these lights would add the lighting that they needed. Next. The type of housing. The houses were, again, were done according to where they were living. This is the city of Meyman. This was one of our school projects back home. And you can see all these holes that you can see is one housing unit. Everything was whole on the ground. Now they have done something also a little bit higher up, but everything is digged into the ground, you know, to cope with the harsh weather. Next one. Or when you see these in Chandawan, which is north of Iran, that they carved into the mountain. This is not the Disneyland that, you know, create the artificial mud, you know, that is carving into the mountain. And the whole mountain on the bottom left-hand corner that you see is the village. That is the village. And you can see the detail of that here. Next one. This is city of Yazd. City of Yazd is probably the best the city in terms of planning wise. All these alleys that you can see is toward the direction of prevailing wind to naturally clean the whole city, first of all, and then through a lot of these courtyards and also attaching with each other, they would reduce the exchange of energy, hot or cold. And by stepping these and also adding all these wind towers and so on to get the wind and bring it down to the bottom portion. Next one. This is another house, one significant house in Kashan, call it the J.E.D.I house. And you can see from outside, you know, the type of the ventilation or wind, the catchers, and also the for all these the shape. And if you look at Gaudi's, you see some similarity with Gaudi's project in Spain and this one. Next. This is Bagh Fin or Fin Garden in Kashan, which was part of a place that our prime minister was living there during the summer. Kashan, which is the hottest place, you know, that you think that would be the last place for people of that high level to come and want to live in Kashan, you know, rather than going to the north. But these water line that is in the middle create and these water jet that you can see, which is also another piece of art, because there is no pump. All these water height is the same because it's connected every 10 meter or 5 meter. The water goes through a canal and goes to the next water jet. So all these jets go the same height. And the two sides of that, they have planted these evergreen trees to create a tunnel that the wind can pass through these, and these direction of these is toward the direction of the natural wind, and they will add the humidity that they need and bring it to inside. Next one. I did that when I was doing the planning for the University of Drew Medical University. I used the same concept of Fin, which you see on the bottom right-hand corner, for this concept of this university, because now the main artery of that is the same toward the direction of the prevailing wind in Los Angeles, as well as the massing of this building were very closely studied to see to cast the minimum shade, and on and on and on. So which I can't elaborate more than that, but that was everything on that one was based on elements of sustainability. Next one. I use the same concept of these alleys in two of my project. The left-hand side is the U.S. Post Office north of Magic Mountain, and the right-hand side is Union Station, baggage handling facility. The same concept that we wanted to create a shade, created the light, and so on, and passageway. Next. The same concept, I use these on the left-hand side, you see it in Isfahan, and on right next to that in the middle is 77 Police Headquarters, and on the bottom in the middle is UCLA Law School. On top of that is Ensenada in Mexico that I built a winery, and a Mar Vista library on top, that we use this fin to create the shading that I wanted. Next. The same concept of wind catcher, I use that on the Mar Vista library, and I said, it can be the same thing. And you can see it's operable window on top that, to bring the wind. And we had to tilt the whole library about 22 degrees to be on the direction of the prevailing winds. And we use the same concept on the left-hand side. On top, you see the library, on the bottom is the same thing that the Iranian the wind tower do. Next. This is the roof of that also is all curved, just like the upper top left-hand corner. That way you increase the surface of the area that get less energy, less heat, because the heat would be divided in larger areas. And how we were using the natural ventilation inside that by this curve, that you bring the prevailing wind and cross ventilation. Next one. That's it. So we were able to use some of these nice part of Iranian architecture in different project that we did here in United States, and we were encouraging people and our colleague to use the same. Unless I go there and just explain that this is coming from Fin, you never know what inspired that as planning. Or if I say this is the wind catcher that I used from back home, you never know that this element is a wind catcher, but can be a piece of architecture and can be very sustainable.
Thank you so much, Mahmoud. That was wonderful to hear and see some of those pictures of Iran and its architecture. I think I'm not the only one that can say that we could probably listen to you for an hour or longer talking about all of these things. So I appreciate that. Next up is Arman and his story. Looking forward to that.
Hello, everyone. I try to be quick. Can you guys hear me before I start? Okay. I try to be quick to make sure that I'm wrapping this up in 5 minutes. Hello, everyone. My name is Arman. I'm very honored and glad to be here with you to share my story today. My story is going to be a little bit of personal. It's a little bit different from what we heard before this. I hope you find interesting things within it. I only have 2 slides that I would be happy to share with you. So And before I start, I wanted to thank AIA, Los Angeles, Mitra, and Zibor for co-hosting and providing us this opportunity to openly speak about ourselves, the path we came to be the person we are now, and moreover to talk about issues that maybe we have never spoken before. So some of the speakers decided to tell you a Persian fact before we start this story. Mine is going to be in a question format. Did you know Persians can dance? I know this sounds like a weird question, right? Some of you may say, of course, they do. Everyone can dance. You are right. Persian dance is one of the most graceful thing you have ever seen. It focuses more on hand and arm movement, and that is why we find it less physically demanding than, say, an African dance. Most Persians grew up in an environment that encourages them to dance from an early age. So when Persians politely refuse to dance in a gathering or wedding, don't get fooled because it is usually just a humble gesture. You would find them dancing passionately with everyone or even solo on the dance floor eventually. Just give them some time. So having said that, I would like to begin my story by introducing myself and allowing you a glimpse into my upbringing and personal experience. I was born and raised in Tabriz. This is the map that you can see. Based on Wikipedia, it is the sixth populated city in Iran, and it is here. It is very on the northwest, close to the border of Turkey and Azerbaijan. And these are some beautiful pictures from some historical buildings. This is Blue Mosque at the bottom left, and there are some pictures from the Grand Bazaar, and these on the left corner you can see our Azeri dance, which is despite Persian dance, it's really a serious dance. Oh, sorry, I need to. So it is a very serious dance. It has serious movements, and I have never been brave enough to try this dance, honestly, to be honest. So anyhow, my fascination with architecture started in the first grade when I was 7 years old with a simple view of a tree out of a wooden window from which I sat across during the first week of our class. Every day, I would look out of a different window trying to place the ever-changing tree within a frame of a different window opening. Days after I realized that tree became my first school friend, and later I realized that I should thank the architect who, despite space limitations, had managed to design all those classrooms in a way to make the trees in the central courtyard visible from all elementary classrooms in a perfect harmony with other school buildings. And when I was 9, I started going to a painting class, and I continued taking that class for another 10 years. That was the moment that I realized that I'm very interested in art and architecture. So I decided that I want to be an architect. I did my bachelor in architecture back home in Tabriz, in the city that you see the pictures on the screen. I graduated at 2011, and same year I applied to a couple of schools in Europe and US to pursue my dream of becoming an architect who creates thoughtful spaces for people to live and flourish. I got my master's admission from SCIARC 2011. In August 2011, I landed LAX with a student visa. And some of you may know how hard it is going through this visa procedure as an Iranian. Even though it is still the student visa is the easiest visa to obtain, but it's still you need to travel to another neighboring countries for an interview, and even for men it's harder because if you serve the military, takes usually 6 months. So I just wanted to share how hard it is for us to go through this visa procedure. So I graduated from SCIARC at 2013, and as a student visa holder, you only have 1 year after your graduation to find a company that is the architecture industry willing to support your visa and possibly apply for your green card. I think that year was the most stressful year I have ever had in my life. I'm pretty sure there are students here and they experience that stressful life. So as a freshman out of school, you have almost no experience working in the state and looking for a job that supports your work visas. That sounds really impossible, but somehow, I'm not sure how, surprisingly, the first interview I had after a week after my graduation, a small size architecture company called LM Design Group, they hired me and they accepted to support my visa. I was happily shocked how that happened, and it was the moment that I started believing in miracles. In a miracle that is coming from my mom. Why my mom? Because she said she was praying for me whole night for past couple of days. Only a Persian mom can do. That is another cultural fact, maybe. She really didn't, or maybe she didn't really want me to go back home. She had enough of me. I'm sure joking. Anyhow, so I started working for LM Design Group, and it took me 5 years to get the green card. While working there, I was occasionally receiving job offers, but I had no other choice than rejecting them. Not saying that I was not working there happy, but I was actually working there happy, but rejecting your dream job wasn't the easiest thing to do. And currently I'm working for KFA Architects, where I believe our vision to architecture has a lot in common. I just passed my last licensing exam in December 2020, a couple of months ago, and I'm very excited to be able to proudly call myself an Iranian-American California licensed architect. So thank you everyone for listening to me. Oh, I forgot to show you the next slide I had. So there are only a couple of pictures. Me and this is me when I was a kid. This is me when I was going to the painting class. This is me in the high school. Number 4 is a picture, my first picture in the United States when I just landed in the United States in Santa Monica. And picture number 5 is my friends coming to the airport when I was leaving Tabriz. That was a big deal. So they had so many friends came to just say bye to me. And these are my parents. This is the view that we always have. I'm pretty sure there's so many of you guys having, and me biking California. Thank you, everyone. I believe next I'm gonna pass to Farzana, if I'm correct.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm grateful to be here and thank you for your time. My name is Farzana Akhavan and I came to the United States 2 years ago as an international student. And my story is from the perspective of a person who experienced studying here more recently. So it would be helpful for those who want or might have a friend or family who would like to study here. Well, my love of design was firstly developed by looking at the unraveled architecture and design of Iran with a keen interest in painting and drawing since I was a kid. This prompted me to begin sketching and rethinking how different spaces could function, considering users in my young age. I studied architecture engineering for my bachelor degree in Iran, and currently I'm studying Master of Interior Design at Woodbury, along with being both in research and teacher assistant at my university. I initially didn't have any idea of how different interior design is from architecture, but working as an intern in interior design firms at the same time of my studies in Iran helped me find out about what I really like to do for my future. Well, I was planning to move to Switzerland, but in the end, I changed my mind and decided to try for where I've always loved to experience living in. I knew it was going to be a hard path, specifically with the president of the time. But eventually, after a stressful year, getting the student visa, as Arman mentioned, I got the 2-year multiple entry visa to study what I loved. But my biggest challenge was choosing to stay in Iran or leave and have a hard time not being around my family after the expiration of my visa with all of the travel bans and political issues. Then I arrived to America late, approximately in the middle of the first semester, having no idea of how to live alone and how to handle everything together, from studying and catching up with the school to cooking and cleaning. But to be fair, staying here helped me grow both mentally and educationally. People might think America is just having fun based on the things they hear or maybe what they see in media. But to me, America equals to hard work. However, in the end, this hard work brings you something special, which is what I call value for your work. People do care about your thoughts and do appreciate hard work, and that's why I like what I like about here. Some of you might already know, but architecture is a major that universities might give you a full fund to study, but with the interior design, getting a partial fund is hard, let alone a full fund. So basically, you should really work hard to support yourself for your tuitions and everything if you don't want to count on your parents' support. And well, that's why I tried to win competitions and scholarships, which fortunately I was kind of successful so far. Unfortunately, I should still keep the competitions a secret for a while until they are officially announced. As a student, you might also experience the heavy burden figuring out how to find a job after graduation and how to get your green card sponsorship, again, by counting on your own abilities, which I'm currently dealing with. My advice for those who are planning to come here would be, firstly, be proactive. Do not wait for the opportunities to come along. Secondly, count on your own abilities while believing in yourself and do not lose your hope. Do not be afraid of asking. I think the last and most important one is plan at least your next 2 to 3 years and have a plan B, because nothing is stable when you are on a student visa here. So now I'm introducing Fatima, my dear friend, as the next presenter, and thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Farzana. Hi, I'm Fatima. I recently graduated from SciArc, also, Arman. I'm going to share a video with you, which is exactly 5 minutes because it was hard for me to wrap up everything in 5 minutes. It's a very, very personal story. I hope it's okay.
I was born and raised in Tehran. Growing up, I wanted to be either a mechanical engineer or an architect. But the closest that I got to this was getting to a university with beautiful architecture and study public administration. The more I got disappointed in my major, the more time I spent in nature away from school. تنها توی ایرون تنها توی تهرون به چه سرده سرمای زمستون میری زیر کرسی اصلا نمیپرسی از سرمای شهرون آخ جون. I met my husband in a backpacking trip. We decided to move to the US for his graduate studies. Here I was still thinking about architecture. I started to design and make some furniture and clothing for myself. I also took some interior design courses in Santa Barbara City College. One day, my dear friend and mentor Farshid, who's a great photographer, introduced me to Michael Rotundi, and he invited me to one of his classes in SciArc. I realized how much I love architecture. And 2 weeks later, I participated in SciArc summer program, Making and Meaning, and started my master's the next fall. At the time, my husband and I were living in Santa Barbara, so I decided to give commuting by train a shot and see what happens. This initially sounded like a crazy idea, considering most SciArc students live across the street or very close by. It was a beautiful ride, drinking my coffee, watching sunrise in the morning. It was my office on the rails. I worked 6 hours a day in the train. Sometimes I would make models or even pin up on the train window. Here are some of the models that I made in SciArc. I'm showing you these models because I really enjoyed making them. I had lots of great instructors. like Anna Neymark, Matthew Au, Devin Weiser, John Enright, John Bond, Michael Rotundi, Eric Moss, Hernan Alonso, and so many others. Another great opportunity Sarah gave me was the Japan studio with John Bond. And the best part was getting to work with Jun Sato on the installation commissioned by Kengo Kuma. In this installation, Kengo Kuma wanted to use a very soft material, which was the thinnest washi paper that exists, to build a human-scaled structure inspired by underwater insect nests. Sato-san gave me the opportunity to design the joints between the modules. It was a great pleasure, and I'm still so happy about it. Lastly, I want to show you some parts of my master's thesis that I had to work on during the lockdown. In this project, which was an intersection of architecture and fashion design, I designed a wearable habitat. It was great to have Hernan Diaz Alonso and John Cooper as my thesis advisors. Thank you, everyone. I hope it was interesting. Oh, I forgot to say something informative about Iran. I just wanted to say, yes, we also have snow. And I'm going to introduce Mahmoud Majd, the next speaker. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hassan Majd. That's okay, Fatima. I was mesmerized by your work and your journey. I forgot what I was going to say, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay. My name is Hassan Majd. My story began leaving Iran during the revolution, 1978. Which I was desperately trying to get into University of Tehran in architectural department. And as soon as the concours we took the concours test, which is a national test to get into university, revolution began. And schools were shut and protests began, and we all got involved in the political movements. And I eventually realized that that's not a life for me. I still need to pursue my architectural or love of architecture elsewhere. I decided to go to France. And so I took a journey to France without telling my parents or anybody I knew. And I bought the ticket 5 days before my travel and let them know that I'm leaving. Everybody got freaked out. And I knew they weren't going to be able to help me anyway, so it was on my own to take on this journey. And so I went to France, spent a year trying to figure out what to do and how to sustain my life as a student and also be able to work. And that wasn't happening. I wasn't succeeding in any way because French is a very difficult language, and French people don't really like foreigners to enter their university because it's mostly free and government pays for it. And so therefore, if you can't speak French fluently and actually have the backgrounds, you basically have no hope. So that was a kind of shut door for me. And I was trying to help a friend. I had decided to go back to Iran at that moment. I had a friend there who wanted to come to US so badly that I had gone to all the consulates in Europe, and everybody had rejected him, from Italy, France, from Azerbaijan, Turkey, everywhere. And I was wondering why he was being rejected so much. So I said, why don't we just go to, at that time, we were in Grenoble at the École d'Université in Grenoble. We said, why don't we just go to Lyon? There's a consulate, maybe we can find out how we can get a visa there. I couldn't believe what happened. I had a friend told me that go see another friend in Lyon and he'll translate your communication with the consulate's office in Lyon. We ended up arriving there 8 o'clock in the morning, not knowing what we're doing. And I started speaking a little bit of broken French, and then the consulate happened to be a very nice gentleman. And he said, well, why are you here? I told him, I said, I'm here only for him because he really wants to go to US, and I'm wondering why he can't go to US. He's such a nice guy, and he's has a great work ethic, and he has great credentials that he's coming back from Iran. And he looked at his documentation and said, I don't see why we couldn't give you a visa. And he said, give me your passport. He took his passport. Make a long story short, he gave him a 4-year student visa. He told me, why are you not going to US? I said, well, I really don't have the credential. I don't know anybody in US. And he said, well, what would you like to go to Atlanta, Georgia? I graduated from Georgia Tech and this and this and that. I said, oh, I would love to go to Georgia Tech, but I don't know anybody there. He said, I'll get you the visa. This is no joke. The consulate sent me a visa, I-20 to Georgia Tech. I got it for within 3-4 weeks. I went back with Sasan, who was my friend, was trying to desperately to come to US, to get his visa. And at that moment, the consulate sent me a phone call through another friend who was translating us. Tell Hassan Mash to bring his passport. So I took my passport, I got a visa. And I came to US in 1979, September 1979. And I landed in Atlanta, and I was there for maybe 3 months. In November, they took the hostages. And so the story went south afterwards. They started deporting everybody, and I got deported, and I found out that there's an attorney who's doing pro bono about all the Iranian students that were deported as they were students. And so we went to court, and our visa got extended and reinstated. So I went back to school. No money was coming around. I had to work at a restaurant. So I worked at a restaurant during the day, at nights, and then went to Georgia Tech for a couple of years. I realized that Atlanta is not my thing. And I tried to research what's the best architectural school for me. And that's when I realized SciArc was a place that I ended up showing up. In 1981, I couldn't register because they were telling me that you don't have any documentation, you have to get your old transcripts from Iran, and so on and so on. I realized that that's what I needed to do, and got a job as a waiter and worked at a restaurant for a few years. And then I went back to school at SciArc 1986. Graduated 1990. And I also went to London through SciArc. We did a year in London with Chris Dawson, and came back, graduated 1990, and worked at Frank Gehry's office, worked at Michael Rotondi and Tom Main. We were at the same partners at the time, and Morphosis, worked at their office for a few years. And then realized that I really wanted to use what I had learned from Iran and the courtyard architecture and the architecture of Earth, and met Nader Khalili, went to the studio with Mr. Khalili, bless his soul, and realized that mud architecture is not for me. I've had a pretty long journey in terms of discovery, in terms of designing furniture, designing rugs and producing in Iran, designing textile, producing in Shah Savan, which is borders Russia. And I had a great run doing furniture, doing interior design. And finally, I landed my company as a design build company, which is we do architecture and construction. And we've been building a residential project for last, I think, 15, 20 years. We've built about 50 projects from, low-income housing to luxury homes in Bel Air and Beverly Hills. And most of my buildings that I've done take the same kind of concept of courtyard architecture. And using the wind and using the solar to be able to sustain the utilities in the house. And we've had a great run for the last 20 years. And we're still doing as strongly as we were 10 years ago. And that's it. Thank you so much for allowing me to have a moment to speak and introduce myself to Iranian architecture community. Now I'm gonna introduce Hasti.
Great. Hello, everyone. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, great. So hi, my name is Hasti Khodabakhsh. Khodabakhsh would be close enough. I know it's hard to pronounce, but in Farsi, this language we speak, names usually have meanings, and my full name means God-given existence. So I try to think that it's worth the hard spelling. I'm a registered architect in DC, and at the moment, a project manager at Design Restoration Group. And I really enjoyed hearing the story so far. Can't wait to hear the rest. I'm very happy to be sharing mine with you, but I'm going to start with a fact or fun fact about my culture. Did you know that in Farsi, we don't have genders? Farsi is the language we speak in Iran, which is influenced by, but different, very different from Arabic. And recently, I just start to think that with all the conversations about gender identity and people having to express what type of pronoun they prefer, in Farsi, we don't have that problem. I know our culture has a long way to catch up when it comes to gender equality and identity, but once we get there, I don't think the language would be a barrier. And now a little bit about my background. I went to University of Tehran. Hassan, sorry you couldn't make it. I did, and it was fun. You missed out. But I did my Bachelor of Architecture there, and did work for a little bit, came to the States, went to Penn State, and did my Master of Architecture. I was on the urban design track because early on I realized that I like to make an impact, and the bigger the scale, the bigger the impact. And I did my thesis on reducing car use through new urban design schemes in Western Tehran. I was about to start my PhD in urban and regional planning and design at University of Maryland, and everything was set. I had a fellowship and everything, and I had a kind of like a surprise job offer from HOK DC back then. It was very hard to find a job to begin with, let alone if you were an international student, needed a visa sponsorship. So I thought, okay, I would go work for a year and go back to school. It didn't happen. I ended up staying and working, and I worked for the architecture department and later on with the planning department. I also worked at SOM DC, and then later when I moved to Gensler around 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago, I worked at Gensler LA. At the moment, I'm with Design Restoration Group, which I'm going to tell you a little more about later. But just a bit about my professional life in the US. The couple pictures of the projects I've been working on over the years, mainly bigger scale projects. mixed use. And as I mentioned, I did planning with HOK. I even worked on a city for 2.5 million people in Istanbul, Turkey. I included this next image, or the lower right one, because it's the headquarters for NIAID, which was the first project I did in the US and saw it built. And because I spent a lot of time drawing the toilet rooms in that building, I keep bragging that I know what type of toilet rooms Dr. Fauci uses. And then Design Restoration Group is a small visualization rendering company that my husband and I started. He was running the visualization department at HOKDC for 9 years, and then he started his own thing. And we mainly do bigger scale projects with big companies like Gensler, HOK, ACOM, VGS, sometimes with small companies too, but we usually we turn into a member of the design team. Those type of projects usually need to fill in the gaps and develop the design. So lots of like airports, every now and then we do fun little projects like these too. A lot of mixed use. And some companies in Europe we also work with. And a lot of sport projects, for some reason, they have the reputation to do sports and concert venues, and I'm sure we all can't wait to go back to these type of events after the pandemic is under control. But for me, the most, sometimes we do smaller, like this one was the design of a bridge, but or the design concept for a project. But my favorite ones are the ones that I kind of make it to the image. You can see in this one, it was a Middle Eastern Institute, had a bunch of images, and one was a gallery, and for copyright reasons, we had to create our own artwork, and my name made it to one of them. Or here, the client was very particular about the entourage, and they wanted somebody standing on the terrace, drinking hot chocolate, looking down, so I had to be photographed for that. Those are fun. And now I want to end with talking about my relationship with architecture. For me, it was kind of like an arranged marriage that worked out, because I grew up basically as a total nerd. We have these type of special schools like for gifted children, one in each city in Iran, that once you make it in, like it's very demanding, and most of, at least my youth, I was just studying. I wasn't exploring anything else. And it was my dad that told me he thought architecture would be a good path after I passed the entrance exam, the nationwide exam we have to take, and based on our ranking, we can choose which school or major to choose. My ranking was good enough that I could make it to the best school and do what almost most of the majors. But my dad, who was a surgeon but also an artist, he played a couple of instruments, wrote poems, and painted, and the calligraphy. He thought that he could see artistic talent and creativity in me. I trusted him because he was always my role model. And I got into architecture, and I feel like it was a good decision that I made. My college years were the best years of my life. But because I grew up around doctor and people in medical profession whose main mission in life was to save lives and improve quality of life, that has always been in the background my mind. And in architecture, I've always been interested in sustainability, but particularly interested in the impact that the built environment makes on our health and well-being. And some people shared their stories about applying for a US visa, and I had my share, and it was so challenging to get it. I made it almost on the last day of late registration and went through a lot of stress. So because my dad didn't want me to go through that again, it was a single entry visa, and also he didn't want me to jeopardize my studies here. When he was diagnosed with cancer, he didn't tell me, he hid it from me, and I found out 2 weeks after he passed away, and he made my mom promise that I would be not going back for the funeral. So I paid a huge price for that, for immigrating and staying here. And I know that education had a big role in my life, and my dad really cared about that and thought this is the way to save humanity. So I've been trying to, apart from my day-to-day job, always do something on the side to raise awareness about this particular topic. And now that we've gone through the pandemic, I think it's a good time, because even if people don't care or are not as concerned about the environmental impacts of climate change. I think the health impacts are going to be severe too, and we've had the wake-up call, and we should look into it in the way we design and the materials we specify, because not only they impact the building's occupants, but also their manufacturing process impacts the people who live around those sites. So with social justice now being on everyone's mind, I think it's a good time for all architects to, look into these issues. So that was my story. Thank you so much for the time, and I pass it on to Mahmoud Karimzadeh.
Happy NOWRUZ, everyone. My name is Mahmoud Karimzadeh. I am an architect. Also, I work for the city of Los Angeles. And I'm assistant general manager for one of the city's department in Bureau of Engineering, who is responsible for design and construction of the public facilities. I'm also Chief Sustainable Design Officer for the art department, and also I was part of the board of directors. I was elected for the first board of directors of Los Angeles chapter, United States Green Building Council, Los Angeles chapter. Having said that, I met my wife in architectural school back home in Iran. And then because of medical reason for our son, who was 6 months old at the time, we came to United States. And when we came here, after a few weeks, it was known that we have to stay longer than we thought. There was no immediate solution to our problem. So I went to work. My wife was taking care of a lot of other things, but later on, she went to UCLA and got another master's from UCLA, and also she got her PhD from UCLA. But I stick to my work in a few years with the private offices, and then I joined the city of Los Angeles. Actually, the reason I joined the city of Los Angeles is my wife, because she got me signed up for the exams, and she got me encouraged to go and take the job. My understanding from city of Los Angeles, and the reason I'm going through this with you, I get to it, but my experience with the city of Los Angeles was what maybe most of you have, and that is when we interact with building and safety, planning department, fire department for our project. That's what we know about the city of Los Angeles and design and construction of projects. But what I learned was that when I got hired by the city of Los Angeles, after the brutal exams, 2 interviews, this and that, was they actually have a unique section in the city called Architectural Division. And Architectural Division is part of the Bureau of Engineering, Department of Public Works. And this division is responsible for public design and public buildings design and construction. It's part of the Bureau of Engineering, which is also responsible for the infrastructure design of the city as well. So giving a little bit of the background for about this division that I worked for so long. I worked for 15 years as the city's principal architect. Last 3 years, I was promoted to assistant general manager. But what I want to do now is to let you know that how important could this city of Los Angeles role play for the architecture in our city.
Mahmoud, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Sure.
we're getting a lot of background noise. I don't know if it's your mic or your surroundings, but some people are having a hard time hearing you.
Your hands free.
Yeah, I'm getting the background noise too from my wife, but yeah, let me see. I didn't have problem that before when we started, right?
Yeah. I think when you move, we hear the movement somehow in your speakers.
So, okay, I know what the problem is now.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. Let me know if the problem still exists. So this division, the Bureau of Engineering, works with nationally known, internationally known architects as consulting firm working for the city on the public projects. I don't have any of those pictures for you, but if you drive around the city, if you see any public facilities that have been built in the last 15 years, new and last 15 years, probably this division, my organization, Bureau of Engineering, had something to do with it. The bridges, you're talking about the gymnasium, parks, public pools, city hall, city buildings, municipal facilities, recreational centers, everything, libraries, police stations and fire stations, and everyone, every facility that you go get some service from the city. This division has something to do with it. The other thing I want to mention is the amount of work this division does. In the last 10 years has produced $1.2 billion worth of construction work and hundreds of projects, probably 400. From those, we have produced more than 60 LEED buildings. Five of them are platinum level, and 15 of them are gold level. Very advanced in sustainable design, very robust program, and one of the strongest program in the nation. Amongst the largest city, we are probably #1 producing sustainable buildings. We have produced in the last 15 years about 1.2 million square feet of LEED building. And because of that, I want to mention this, that I know many of you are in school still. Many of you are graduated and looking for career or changing career. I want to encourage you considering working for the city of Los Angeles. We have a very strong internship program, and we do campus recruitment every year. We come to the campuses and we recruit architects. And we have in our office many people from SciArc, many people from Woodbury University, USC, UCLA, and other schools that have produced a lot of good work. 30 years ago, when I joined the city, design excellence was not part of their strategy. And basically, there was no protocols for project management or construction management. Not all of them are in place. In many years, more than a decade that we've been partnering with AIA, we have gone through the strategies and putting policies in place that could bring a design excellence to every communities that we have as part of equality that we can bring to our communities in the city. And I encourage you, if you're in school, consider working as an intern, and is a paid intern, by the way, or sometimes unpaid too, when we don't have enough funding or numbers are filled up. And then if you get into the roster and become a designer and then later on project manager, you can get your hands on exciting projects from libraries, from municipal buildings, city halls, bridges. Believe it or not, we design bridges as well. And a lot of consulting work have teamed up with us and produce a lot of good work for the city. And because of those work, I believe whenever we go in opening a public pool or a gymnasium in any community, we have seen our communities are showing their appreciation by participating, coming and using those facilities. It's much rewarding work. And also put you on the map too. Every project that the city does put architects on the map. So with that, I just want to say that I hope my stories, which was shorter on my journey from home here, but more about my journey working here, help you that trying to find a job or change a career or getting out of school and establish a career, choose to work for the city of Los Angeles. Thank you. And with that, I'm handing it off to Mehrnoush Mujallal.
Happy NOWRUZ. Good to see you all. This is very interesting. I may talk about my background. I came to US when I was 16. I came to high school here in Pasadena, and I came here a long time ago, 66. So I was the only Iranian around, and I didn't speak English, and I was the only foreigner, basically, from Iran into Pasadena High School. It was really challenging. I loved it. I love every minute of it. And I learned English, and I did well. But when I was in Iran, up to 16 years, my challenge and my fun in life was to draw a lot. So that saved me. And when I came here, I continued on drawing, and I was interested in architecture. I went to Pasadena City College, and thereafter I went to Oregon University to get my bachelor's, and I worked a few years here in LA, and I took a trip back to Iran, and I traveled different cities, and I loved it, and I photographed it, and I became more interested in urban design, and I had some ideas which I shared with Harvard University when I had an interview, and so I was able to get in for a master's degree in urban design at Harvard, and the reason was I was a lot of information gathered, photograph, and cities and urban issues and culture from Iran, and I presented. So thereafter, when I graduated, I worked. I really wanted to go back to Iran, but after the revolution, it was a little difficult. So I went and worked for IMP for a few years, and thereafter moved to LA area, and Venice is the city that I really liked always. The culture was great at that time, which was like in about early 80s. And I've been here, and then I worked for a lot of firms here in LA, and I finally started my own practice. And I worked about 8 or 9 years. I was in the land use planning committee, and I'm trying to get into the maybe Venice Neighborhood Council, maybe. But I've started doing a lot of public spaces designs on my own, which I'm trying to share with the council. And the last year has been really difficult to proceed. So I enjoyed it, and I'm going to continue on with my interest in public spaces, as well as I'm doing other architectural projects for clients. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehrnoush. I think next up is Suzanne.
Thank you, Mitra. Thank you, Mehrnoush.
Welcome.
My name is Susanna Mobassaq. I'm from Tehran, Iran. And this is a very interesting evening. I've been enjoying hearing everybody's stories, and I have a story to share with you. Let me share my presentation real quick, and I can begin my story. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey from Iran to LA, and how I left and why I left Iran in 1997, and what diversity and inclusion means to me and to my family, and how I ended up in LA. So I finished high school in Iran in 1996, and I was accepted to one of the nicest universities in Iran, University of Polytechnic Amir Kabir. And I just attended that university for a few months when we heard that we got the immigration visa to Canada. my family, my parents worked very hard to get us immigration visa for Canada, because Canada and also Australia were one of the few countries that had open doors for immigrants. And it was very important to my father that his kids get very good education and have lots of open opportunities in the world, not just limited in the country that we were born. So we decided to pack our bags and leave Iran. And it was, sorry, I'm getting emotional. It was not a easy decision. We had to leave many things behind. And we had a very comfortable life in Iran. My father, who is a very successful architect with a very successful business in Iran, who supported us and provided us a very comfortable life, opened up this door for us. And I was the first child that left and arrived in Canada in 1997 in Toronto, in the month of March, just before New Year, just before Eid NOWRUZ, where everything is blooming in the spring in the city where I grew up. And everything was frozen to ice in Toronto when we arrived. And that was fine. It was a new adventure, and we were excited, arrived to a new country and had to start from scratch. And my parents stayed for a month. They went back to Iran, and I stayed in Toronto and began my journey. I stayed in Toronto for about 7 years, went to College of Interior Design, studied interior design. And from there, another door opened for me, and I moved to Washington, D.C. and studied architecture. And then from there, another door opened for me, and I moved to Los Angeles, California. Since 2013, I have been living here. And this is what I remember from Iran when I left. The Tehran, the city where I grew up. Beautiful mountains, beautiful urban fabric, very green. Damavand, where we used to go over the weekend sometimes, and Park Millat, one of the most beautiful parks in Tehran that we used to go as a child with my family and play. We used to take ski trips north of Tehran every winter. We rented a chalet and went skiing for many years. And then for summer vacations, we used to go north of Iran to Shamal by Caspian Sea, an image you can see here, and pass through beautiful cities and get exposed so much with nature and architecture. Just like previous presentations, how nature and climate actually influence the architecture and the cities and the buildings. You can see how they have been built on the hillside. And these are the streets actually that you can see as the elevation changes. And just how green north of Iran is. And this is an image of the people picking teas. And the city of Isfahan, where my father is from, which we used to go every year before Eid NOWRUZ, and we stayed there for the whole 13 days and celebrated with my family. This is an image of a bazaar, Meidun Shah in Iran, that is always full of people, full of life, full of colors. Bridge called Siyasepol that has a beautiful reflection on Zayand Rud, and also Chel Sutun, one of the oldest landmarks in Isfahan. So I was exposed always with so much architecture and beauty in my home country, and the cities that we traveled through, trips that we took every year with my family, and places that we saw, again, courtyard architecture, access, water features, details, colors, tile work, the wind tunnels, natural ventilation, all that was, I was surrounded by it. And then this is just an image of the night that I left Iran, and this is my father and my aunts and uncles. The night that I left, which was very difficult, and moved to Toronto, Canada, took the first ESL class to learn English. And from there started the interior design program. And this is the first trip that my father visited me and was teaching me how to draft using the drafting table, and graduated from that program. And another door, as I said, opened for me to move to United States, and I got accepted to University of Virginia Tech in Alexandria, Washington, DC, and studied Masters of Architecture. This is where I met my husband in this photo, and my family who came and were there for my thesis defense. This is an image of my thesis project, a museum of gemstones at Rock Creek Park in Washington, DC, and the celebration of my thesis defense with my father, who supported me throughout the whole way of path to architecture. So where I met my husband, we came to California, we got married, and this is a picture of our wedding. And from there, I landed at Co-Architects, where I work now for the past 5 years, and an image with my wonderful colleagues at Co-Architects. And then just few images to share with you from how we celebrate Eid NOWRUZ, what diversity means to us, and inclusion, because I am married to a non-Persian person. My husband is Greek, and a lot of my family members are married to non-Persian, and diversity is very important to me, to my family, and also at Co-Architects, that we have 7 Persians at our office and many, many people from many different countries, that we all came together and celebrate different traditions and speak many different languages and share different backgrounds. So with that, happy spring, happy new year, and Eid NOWRUZ Mubarak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, for that beautiful story. And thanks to all of the speakers. Honestly, all of you guys have inspired me with your unique and touching stories. And isn't it amazing how our immigration has had these tough paths to get us where we are today. And together we now are living in the city of LA. Before we open up to questions, because we would love to hear some feedback about how you thought this program was and what the future may hold, I thought that, Ziba and I thought that maybe we can share a poem. Poetry is so big in Iran, and it's a big part of, has been a big part of my life. And a lot of people know Rumi these days, so I wanted to share this poem with him called Spring. Again, the violet bows to the lily. Again, the rose is tearing off her gown. The green ones have come from the other world, tipsy like the breeze up to some new foolishness. Again, near the top of the mountain, the anemone's sweet features appear. The hyacinth speaks formally to the jasmine. Peace be with you, and peace to you, lad. Come walk with me in this meadow.
Mitra, that was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone, speakers, really emotional stories. I've been so inspired and also learned so much from your experiences and your stories. So to the audience, we wanted to show how Iranian community has contributed to shaping the experience in Los Angeles, highlighting our colleagues, and also highlighting AIA to Iranian community. So we really want to hear from you. What do you think you got out of this? And how do you think we can continue this dialogue forward? So I just want to open it to the audience. and please join us.
Usually just takes one person to ask a question, and you can unmute yourself and then I'll highlight you so you'll be on this page with Mitra and Ziba. Maybe one of our speakers could start as well if you want to rejoin the conversation.
Okay, I ask a question to break the ice. Ziba and Mitra, are you going to have more meetings like this in the future?
Well, the hope is definitely to have that, Mahmoud, and we would love to highlight, I mean, this has been so amazing today, and it would be great to highlight more of the Iranian community, more of our stories, and how AIALA, the community of architects in LA and the community of Iranian-American architects can collaborate more together and what benefits they can get from each other.
Yes, and the idea of this event was really kickstart a program that actually it's going to continue for, you know, as I mentioned, J.E.D.I series is it's highlighting various culture and architects. And for example, for the Hispanic Heritage Month, we showcase Latinx journey in architecture. And because of that, we actually created a new program that has continued conversation in that area. So we really want to actually this event to continue, and we really need help of the audience and everybody who has participated to contribute and give ideas for the next dialogue.
I also have a question, if you can hear me. I think we heard from different age groups, people from different generations, and I was wondering if you think it's getting easier for Iranian architects to make it here, to assimilate or be successful professionally, or it's getting more difficult, or what's the differences you think in different generations in terms of experience?
That's a good question, Hasti. I mean, I think, you know, obviously the struggles continue, I think, from what we've heard, especially with new immigrants coming that have to deal with immigration, with visas, with, you know, Arman shared his story, which I hear often, trying to come here. So I'm not sure from my perspective, and you know, if it's gotten easier or if it's harder. It's just probably different things that we're dealing with now that maybe, you know, each generation deals with different ways of having to navigate what the challenges they face in front of them.
I agree, but I think also personally with the new technology, at least the fact that we could virtually be in touch with our families back home is a great help. I think you guys didn't have that opportunity. Phone calls were much more difficult. There were no emails and FaceTime. So at least that one I really appreciate.
That's true. Good, great point.
Steve. So we have a question from Rima. If you want to unmute yourself and ask, she said, are you going to are you going to have some in interior design? If you want to unmute yourself, my suggestion would also be to join the interiors committee. It's a very diverse committee, actually. But if you'd like to elaborate on that, please unmute yourself. Or Mitra, if you have anything to add.
Could you repeat the question?
She's just wondering if she would like to know more Iranian Americans in this field, like especially in interior design.
I think that's actually a good question. I mean, good question for Farzaneh, who's in interior design. Farzaneh, do you want to take that?
Sure. So she's asking if we're going to have more of interior design people talking here, or I mean, having a group like this. I would be glad to have something like that. And if she's interested, I will put my email in the chat so she can get connected to me. I'm not sure if it's going to help or not.
I also want to encourage anybody on this, participating, that if you're interested to get involved and be part of, this event and help organize the next one and bring all your ideas forward, because this is the only way we can really make a difference in future.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ziba?
Yes.
I wanted to congratulate everybody who was associated with this program, and a special hello to Ziba, my friend of many years. I just thought that, first of all, excellent presentations from everybody, especially I bow down to Fatima Jalali's work. It was beautiful, it was exquisite. And one of the opportunities I see for this platform is to create a digital museum of the work of the presenters. Not necessarily as a promotional thing, but as an inspirational collection of work that is being done, and absolutely everything was quality work. And also maybe categorizing it in a digital interior design gallery, or, like there's some people who presented furniture works. Some people talked about the relationship of art and architecture, the sustainability angle. I mean, the world, there's infinite possibilities of combinations of how you could articulate the notion of architecture and its references to Iran, and basically how it relates to the everyday life and the contemporary work that's being done today. Clearly, there's a generation of incredibly talented Iranian young architects coming from Iran, getting schooled in the top schools in the US. And I'm 59 years old. I've been here for, since I was 17, but I've always wondered, why don't Iranians gather together and have a cultural institution that owns the top talent of Iranian creativity? And it could be architecture. I mean, we know the names, the top 5, 10 names of Iranian architects currently doing global work. If you could potentially reach out to them, they would be honored. I'm sure they would find time to come and participate in this dialogue and inspire future members to join and share their stories. And everyone who said their story was an incredible journey, and it was an incredibly inspiring story. And I just think the potential is endless and unlimited. And if you could actually harness some of the work into a digital format where it becomes a website, it becomes a place where people go and get more inspired, that would be fantastic, because it becomes kind of a jewel place. It may start to become a digital kind of gallery or museum or cultural space where future generations, even generations in Iran, could tap into through the internet and know that they have a kind of a landing somewhere. Be it Los Angeles, it could be anywhere. And they say, this is where I'm going to stake my post and try to create and biologically grow this source of creativity for all Iranian Americans around, or Iranians who are in diaspora everywhere. And it could be a hugely inspirational opportunity for everybody. And once again, thank you for what you did today.
Since I cannot see you, I'm just going by the voice. Is this Mehran?
Yes, it is.
Nice to hear your voice, and thank you for this idea. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I'm wondering whether we can actually get you to get involved and help us with that.
I would love to. I would love to provide you with thoughts, and you can take it any way you want. But I found it very inspirational, and I think the moment in time is right in this new kind of pandemic, digital, quasi physical digital world, where your reach to the global Iranian creative community can become much more powerful. And if you categorize it in terms of sculpture, art, architecture, and have these cross-referential influences on each other, then it becomes a much larger community. And we heard a lot about SciArt, but there are people at Harvard, there are people at Princeton, there are people at Yale, there are people at Georgia Tech, there are people at Rice University. I mean, all over the United States, there are very talented young Iranians who are doing great work. And Fatima's work was just mind-blowing in terms of her presentation and the quality and the kind of the cross-referencing between fashion, art, and architecture. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dior calls her one day, But what I'm saying is that there are many Fatimas out there, and if you can provide a platform and provide a beachhead for them, then the sky is the limit.
Thank you so much, Mehran. That's, this is a wonderful idea. And these are the type of ideas that we really need from everyone. So Mehran is actually a very talented architect that I know for a long time. And I would be honored if you actually can join our team and push this forward.
It would be an honor on my part. I rarely get involved in these things, but you guys were awesome. I mean, this whole presentation was really, really inspirational.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions in the chat, but definitely if anybody is interested in doing anything at AIA and joining committees, please feel free to email me and I'll put you in touch with the correct committee. I think that's a great idea. We always need help here to push new ideas forward because we are a small staff.
Agreed. Thank you for that. And I know we're running late, but this has been so amazing to hear everybody and to meet and see some of the faces here. And please, you can find both Ziba and I, our email addresses at the AIALA website. Reach out to us if you're interested in participating in future events that highlight Iranian-American architecture. If you're interested in learning more about being involved in AIALA, we're both board members and we can share some of the things that we're passionate about and why we've chosen to be on the board. But excited to meet with all of you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Feel free to unmute yourself and give these two wonderful hosts for tonight a round of applause and everybody else that participated today. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Happy NOWRUZ, everyone.
Happy NOWRUZ.
Thanks, everyone. Happy NOWRUZ.
Bye.
All right, thank you. Sorry for the technical